September 6th, 2018. The day our city changed forever.
I thought, this is just it. This is going to be the end of my life.
A gunman opened fire in downtown Cincinnati. 3 innocent lives lost and others wounded.
This isn't a bad dream. This is really happening right now.
On 9 on Your Side at 7, we reflect on the Fifth Third shooting 1 year later and how it's impacted our home.
That we won't let terrorists define our freedom.
We look at how victims are turning tragedy into positive change. And why officers say it could have been much worse.
I think without it, things could have been totally different.
Our special Fifth Third shooting 1 year later starts now. And welcome to this special edition of 9 on Your Side at 7. I'm Kristen Hartman. It was a very different day in this newsroom and in many other tri-state offices and homes on this date last year. A gunman opened fire inside the Fifth Third Center right near Fountain Square. To this day, nobody knows for sure why he did it. But what we do know is that 3 innocent lives were lost. We want to begin by remembering them. 64-year-old Rick Newcomer was a contractor working for a construction firm. He was in the building working on a project when he was shot. People who knew him say he was a terrific guy. He is survived by his wife, 3 kids, and 8 grandchildren. 25-year-old Prudvi Raj Kandepi was a graduate student and consultant for Fifth Third. He was the main supporter of his parents living more than 8,000 miles away in India. Friends say his family was everything to him. The third victim, 48-year-old Luis Felipe Calderon. He was a manager with the bank. He was also a father. All of their days started normally, a typical late summer Thursday morning. But everything changed when the first shots rang out at about 9:06 that morning. Officers say the gunman fired nearly 30 shots after entering the building. The shooting sent the hundreds in and around Fountain Square running for cover. Police were on the scene almost immediately. At 9:11 a.m., about 5 minutes after the first shots were fired, police shot and killed the gunman. But in those 5 minutes, the gunman killed 3 and hit 2 other people. One of the wounded, contractor Brian Sarver. He was working with Rick Newcomer when both were shot. Sarver says he fell to the floor, crawled down a stairwell, and prayed.
You know, God, you got to help me to get out of this. Surely this is not the way I'm going to die, right, and be trapped, because if he would have come around the landing, you know, if he'd have came down the stairs, I would have literally been trapped at the bottom of a stairwell. No way but up to get out of there.
The other victim, Fifth Third Vice President Whitney Austin. She was shot 12 times, but she survived. I spoke with her in detail about that day, her recovery, and her new life mission. That interview a little later in this newscast. The shooting sparked calls for change, but what has been done? 9 on Your Side's Lisa Smith asked city leaders and activists.
3CDC programs up to 500 events on Fountain Square each year. The criteria is free and family friendly. Despite yellow tape crisscrossing Fountain Square this time last year, Cincinnatians have not abandoned their favorite place to gather.
If anything, I think it's been a bit of a strengthening point to say, no, this is our square, and people were coming down to reclaim it and say, you know, we're not going to let this one tragic act kind of take away from this community space and this gathering space.
In fact, it was the first place Cincinnatians gathered to console one another after the shooting that shook the city's soul.
I think it affects all of us that Fountain Square was a target of a terrorist attack. But it's also a sign of the resilience of our spirit that we won't let terrorists define our freedom, that we continue to go there, and Fountain Square is as vibrant as ever.
Michelle Mueller was working on her laptop a year ago, September 6th. She was doing work for the gun violence prevention group Moms Demand Action, formed after Sandy Hook. Another member called her.
He said, Michelle, I'm on my way. There's a active shooting situation going on at Fifth Third. Your heart just drops and you think, you know, what is it going to take?
Moms Demand Action has over 6 million members nationally. Their numbers swell every time there's a mass shooting. She says about 90% of Americans support background checks.
What has changed overall is 17 states now have red flag laws, and 21 states have their own comprehensive background checks.
They'll be in Columbus this fall to encourage the passage of background checks and red flag laws. Meanwhile, Mayor Cranley says the city is still fighting to get its ban on bump stocks reinstated. Currently, they're appealing a judge's restraining order that prevents the ordinance from being enforced. He's also leading an effort to get gun manufacturers to develop smart gun technology.
Someday there'll be a gun that can only be fired by the owner of that gun.
Back on Fountain Square, safety remains a top priority for everyone. There's high visibility of Cincinnati police officers and armed bank guards. 3CDC staff stays in closer communication with both, doing their best to keep the city's most famous public place safe. Lisa Smith, 9 on your side.
Preparing for the worst. Ahead on 9 on your side at 7, we take you inside the active shooter training police say saved many lives that day. Plus, staying Cinci Strong, a look at how the community came together to help the victims of the shooting. We'll be right back. Cinci Strong, the phrase was born after the shooting. It is now a rallying cry of pride for our home. Tri-state natives helped victims and their families in a big way. People donated nearly $240,000 to the Cincinnati Strong Victims Fund. That fund was started with a $1 million donation from Fifth Third. And you probably still see these shirts around town. Cinci shirts donated all proceeds in the initial weeks after the shooting. The company helped raise more than $40,000. Many businesses are at the center of mass shootings. They face lawsuits, building demolition, and other problems in the aftermath. But Fifth Third has avoided all of that. Crisis management experts think it's because Fifth Third focused on community healing.
It wasn't a panacea, it wasn't veneer. It really came across as transparent and authentic and caring.
Third's emphasis on healing will continue this fall. The bank's new History Museum will open a temporary exhibit on the healing power of art. It will include a digital display of the Fifth Third Strong sign that bank employees created with their handprints 3 weeks after the shooting.
I just get so caught off guard with those amazing moments because I am alive and I get to be a mommy and I get to be a wife.
Cinci Strong is Whitney Strong. In less than 3 minutes, shooting survivor Whitney Austin takes us through her recovery and how she is trying to turn her trauma into good. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Out of tragedy comes stories of tremendous bravery and courage. On this day last year, Fifth Third employee Whitney Austin was walking into work on a seemingly normal day. That night, she would be in the hospital fighting for her life. Austin was shot 12 times as she tried to enter through a revolving door. But she survived, and now she's turning her trauma into a force for change. Austin joins us now on set. We want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to start with that thought. How have you changed this into a force for change?
So I knew very early on that I could either sit in the depths of despair or I could take what happened to me and turn it into good. And that felt like the only thing I could do because I had been given such a great gift, the gift of life.
So you're taking a look at gun laws? What are you specifically doing?
Yeah, we're looking to reduce gun deaths overall. So absolutely, we are focused on some legislative solutions, but we're also focused on things that have nothing to do with passing laws at all. It's all about making sure that year over year we see less people die at the hands of guns.
Some people say that is a huge issue to tackle and that it can potentially be a futile effort. Do you buy that?
No, and I don't think anybody that is in my situation that is a victim of a mass shooting would agree with that either. I think there are absolutely things that we can do, things that we can come together to do, and those are the things that we should do. Incremental progress is what we're fighting for at Whitney Strong.
Okay, you referenced the fact that you are a victim. Do you mind taking us back to the day that you were shot in that revolving door?
Yeah, it was a really, really difficult day because I thought I was going to die. And then all of a sudden I wasn't going to die because my savior, Officer Al Staples, popped into my view. And from that moment on, I was convinced this man is going to save me. I'm going to get back home to my kids and to my husband. And then once I do, I'm going to be a force for good. But it was a very difficult day, the most difficult day.
Did you see him, the gunman?
No, I didn't. And I think that's one of the reasons I am able to be so mentally strong, is because I don't have those images that I need to push out of my head. So no, I didn't. I walked into that situation. I heard the noise, but I felt outward, looking out to Fountain Square. So it really all happened behind me. My focus was entirely on Al and getting out of that situation and getting back to my family.
This seems like an incredibly naive question. Was there fear in that moment, or did you have time to have fear?
Oh, for sure. There was fear. There was definitely fear, but I was mainly focused on how do I get out of this situation. So it's hard to explain. Adrenaline is pumping. Your desire is to survive. So that is primarily what I focused on, but absolutely there were moments where I was afraid.
Let's talk about the officer. How did the officer help you pull through?
There's just something about Al's face. I mean, one, he was the only guy on the scene, anybody, there wasn't anybody to save me, and then all of a sudden he was there. And while his face was full of fear, it was also a source of comfort for me, and I just instinctively believed, all right, this is it. I'm gonna get out of this situation. And Al is an amazing man. Whether it's he's saving my life or we're just having a conversation about life, he is such an amazing and good man.
That's the good in that day.
Yes, yes.
Okay. You were shot 12 times. Recovery from that, understandably, takes a long time. Talk about your recovery, please.
Yeah, so I think I finally reached the point where I'm not doing some sort of therapy every single day. But at the very beginning, I couldn't even pull my own pants up. I couldn't send text messages. I couldn't write, which is funny when you think about all the things I was doing to establish Whitney Strong. But it was really, really tough. I had nurses in my home every day packing and unpacking my wounds. But slowly but surely, my body started to heal. And where I am today is that my right arm isn't as strong as it used to be, but it's getting close. I have one more surgery in front of me, but these things are not important, right? What is important is that I am alive and I get to be with my family and I get to have a life of purpose.
You told me that you have your bad days, but your beautiful days.
I do. So just like I have bad days, I also randomly have amazing days. And they come up when, just in the simplest of moments, my children come to me and they say something sweet like, "Mommy, I'm so glad you're alive, because if you weren't alive, this summer wouldn't have been any fun." And I just get so caught off guard with those amazing moments because I am alive and I get to be a mommy and I get to be a wife.
There must be just such a grateful feeling about that, having come through what you came through.
I know I am unbelievably lucky, and that's why I am doing Whitney Strong, because it doesn't make any sense. If you've been given something that doesn't make sense, what do? You try and pay it forward.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing.
Whitney, when you talk about your nonprofit, what is your hope?
It's pretty simple. As a business-minded person, I want to see that the number of gun deaths are going down in our cities, in our state, and at the national level year over year. I want less people dying.
All right. Whitney Austin, thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for giving us your time and for sharing your story.
Okay, thank you.
We appreciate it. When the Fifth Third shooter took aim on innocent people, police responded and stopped the threat within minutes. As 9 on Your Side anchor Tanya O'Rourke shows us, it was no accident that those officers were able to take the shooter down.
The chilling body camera video of the Cincinnati police officers in their finest moments. A group of officers acting as a unit, no hesitation. all learned in moments just like this one.
Don't move! Don't move!
In fact, when you see how these officers responded on that September day, police say it's directly related to the fact that in the weeks before, they were given active shooter training.
I think without it, things could have been totally different.
Officer Al Staples was on the scene that September morning, working to save Whitney Austin, who had been shot multiple times. In the active shooter scenario taught last year, officers learned how to respond to an active shooter situation and how to save lives by using tourniquets.
Training has been one of the components that has really helped us survive the things that we need to do.
You talk about the importance of making this as stressful as possible. Why?
It's important to us the first time an officer's stressed out is in a training atmosphere. If they start to make a mistake or if they have a moment where they get confused by the stress, we want that to occur in training. So when they're out on the street and they are under stressful situations, it's not the first time they've experienced that stress.
At the police academy, every officer was trained last year on active shooter response. This video given to us by the police department shows a similar training situation. The incredibly lucky decision to do this type of training was Chief Elliot Isaacs.
I was very adamant that we needed to do some more around active shooter training. We had done some things in the past, but we hadn't done any hands-on live training. We had just completed that in August, and then September we had the situation on Fountain Square. So to say things were timely, yeah, I was very happy that we had made that decision.
The most terrifying part for me is conducting this active shooter training for months before that incident happened, and the fear of one of our officers being injured, knowing how instrumental I was in training them to do that job. That was on my mind the most.
So you felt such a heavy personal responsibility.
Huge burden.
Officer Steve Paponis and Sergeant Dan Kavanaugh are part of the CPD staff that trains the rank and file. Now consider this as you watch the 5 officers on that body camera respond as if they were a tactical unit. None of them had worked together before.
The Fifth Third situation proved what we're doing is beneficial. We do the exact same training for every single officer, so if they arrive, much like Fifth Third, if they arrive to a scene and it's 3 people they've never worked with, all the tactics and skills they've learned are the same and they can work together.
We have to do the best here to ensure that our officers are safe and that they're doing the right thing for the citizens of this community.
If that training doesn't happen, these officers may not have been able to respond as they did, putting more lives at risk, including their own.
In this profession, that is the one thing that I do fear. You know, this is a family. You know, each and every one of these officers that wear these uniforms, that is something that I'm always concerned about. That is my greatest fear, is losing an officer in the line of duty.
Tanya O'Rourke, 9 on your side.
Stay with us. We'll have more after the break. We want to thank you for joining us for our reflection. The Fifth Third shooting bent our community, but could not break it thanks to the resilience of so many brave people. We have much more on WCPO.com. Our digital reporters spoke with many other people about that day, including the manager of the pastry shop inside the building where the shooting started. Now, we would like to leave you tonight with an image cartoonist Kevin Necessary drew. It says so much about that day.